In a meeting with German military leaders on February 3, 1933, Hitler spoke of conquest for living space in the East and its ruthless Germanization as his ultimate foreign policy objectives. In March, Prince Bernhard Wilhelm von Bülow, secretary at the Foreign Office, issued a statement of major foreign policy aims, joining with Austria, the restoration of Germany's national borders of 1914, rejection of military restrictions under the Treaty of Versailles, the return of the former German colonies in Africa, and a German zone of influence in Eastern Europe. Hitler found Bülow's goals to be too modest. Germany withdrew from the League of Nations and the World Disarmament Conference in October 1933. In January 1935, over 90% of the people of the Saarland, then under League of Nations administration, voted to unite with Germany. That March, Hitler announced an expansion of the armed forces to 600,000 members, 6 times the number permitted by the Versailles Treaty, including development of an air force and an increase in the size of the navy. Britain, France, Italy, and the League of Nations condemned these violations of the treaty, but did nothing to stop it. The Anglo-German Naval Agreement of June 18th allowed German tonnage to increase to 35% of that of the British Navy. Hitler called the signing of the Anglo-German Naval Agreement the happiest day of his life, believing that the agreement marked the beginning of the Anglo-German alliance he had predicted in his book My Struggle. Germany reoccupied the demilitarized zone in the Rhineland on March 1936 in violation of the Versailles Treaty. Hitler also sent troops to Spain to support General Franco during the Spanish Civil War, after receiving an appeal to help in July 1936. In February 1938, on the advice of his new pro-Japanese foreign minister, Joachim von Ribbentrop, Hitler ended the Sino-German alliance with the Republic of China to instead enter into an alliance with the more modern and powerful Empire of Japan. Hitler announced German recognition of Manchukuo, the Japanese-occupied state of Manchuria, and renounced German claims to their former colonies in the Pacific held by Japan. At a meeting in the Realm Chancellery with his foreign ministers and military chiefs that November, Hitler restated his intention to acquire living space for the German people. He ordered preparations for war in the East to begin as early as 1938 and no later than 1943. He felt that a severe decline in living standards in Germany as a result of the economic crisis could only be stopped by military aggression aimed at seizing Austria and Czechoslovakia. From early 1938 onwards, Hitler was carrying out a foreign policy ultimately aimed at war. On March 12, 1938, Hitler announced the unification of Austria with Nazi Germany. Hitler then turned his attention to the ethnic German population of the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia. On 28th to 29th March 1938, Hitler held a series of secret meetings in Berlin with Konrad Henlein of the Sudeten German Party, the largest of the ethnic German parties of the Sudetenland. The men agreed that Heinlein would demand increased autonomy for Sudeten Germans from the Czechoslovakian government, thus providing a pretext for German military action against Czechoslovakia. In April, Hitler ordered the High Command of the Armed Forces to prepare for Case Green, the code name for the invasion of Czechoslovakia. As a result of intense French and British diplomatic pressure, on September 5th, the Czechoslovakian president unveiled the Fourth Plan for constitutional reorganization of his country, which agreed to most of Henlein's demands for Sudeten autonomy. Henlein's party responded by instigating a series of violent crashes with the Czechoslovakian police that led to the declaration of martial law in certain Sudeten districts. On September 29th, Adolf Hitler, Neville Chamberlain, Edouard Daladier, and Benito Mussolini attended a one-day conference in Munich that led to the Munich Agreement, which handed over the Sudetenland district to Germany. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain was satisfied with the Munich conference, calling the outcome peace for our time. While Hitler was angered about the missed opportunity for war in 1938, he expressed his disappointments in a speech on October 9th in Saarbrücken. As a result of the summit's peaceful results, Hitler was selected Time magazine's Man of the Year for 1938. Then on March 15, 1939, in violation of the Munich Accord, Hitler ordered the armed forces to invade Prague, Czechoslovakia, and from Prague Castle, he subsequently split it into the German Proctorate of Bohemia and Moravia and the pro-German client state, the Slavic Republic. Hitler also delivered the March 20th, 1939 ultimatum to Lithuania, forcing the concession of the Klaipėda region. In private discussions in 1939, Hitler declared Britain the main enemy to be defeated and that Poland's obliteration was a necessary prelude to that goal. The eastern flank would be secured and land would be added to Germany's living space. Offended by the British guarantee on March 31st, 1939 of Polish independence, he said, "I shall brew them a devil's drink." In a speech in Wilhelmshaven for the launch of the battleship Tirpitz on April 1st, he threatened to denounce the Anglo-German naval agreement if the British continued to guarantee Polish independence. Poland was to either become a German satellite state or it would be neutralized in order to secure the realm's eastern flank and prevent a possible British blockade. Hitler initially favored the idea of a satellite state, but upon its rejection by the Polish government, he decided to invade and made this his main foreign policy goal of 1939. On April 3rd, Hitler ordered the military to prepare for invading Poland on August 25th. In a parliament speech on April 28th, he renounced both the Anglo-German naval agreement and the German-Polish non-aggression pact. Hitler was concerned that a military attack against Poland could result in a premature war with Britain. Hitler's foreign minister and former ambassador to London, Joachim von Ribbentrop, assured him that neither Britain nor France would honor their commitments to Poland. Accordingly, on August 22, 1939, Hitler ordered a military mobilization against Poland. This plan required Soviet support, and the non-aggressive Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between Germany and the Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin, included a secret agreement to partition Poland between the two countries. Hitler unsuccessfully tried to maneuver the British into neutrality by offering them a non-aggression guarantee on August 25th. He then instructed Ribbentrop to present a last-minute peace plan with an impossibly short time limit in an effort to blame the imminent war on British and Polish inaction. George Elser was a carpenter in Germany who had decided to kill Hitler while he made his annual speech in commemoration of the beer hall overthrow. He started by installing a secret door in the timber paneling to a pillar behind the speaker's rostrum. After removing the plaster behind the wall, he hollowed out a chamber in the brickwork for his bomb. George Elser installed the explosion's pillar. The high-ranking Nazis who accompanied Adolf Hitler to the anniversary of the beer hall throw on November 8, 1939, were Joseph Goebbels, Reinhard Heydrich, Rudolf Hess, Robert Ley, Alfred Rosenberg, Julius Streicher, August Frank, Hermann Esser, and Heinrich Himmler. Unbeknownst to George Elser, Hitler had initially canceled his speech at the Bergen-Belsen to devote his attention to planning the imminent war with France, but changed his mind and attended after all. With the start time of the reunion brought forward half an hour to 8 p.m., Hitler cut his speech from the planned 2 hours to 1.5. Hitler ended his address to the 3,000-strong audience of the party faithful at 9:07 p.m., 13 minutes before Elser's bomb exploded at 9:20. By that time, Hitler and his entourage had left the Burger Bruckkeller. The bomb brought down part of the ceiling and roof and caused the gallery and an external wall to collapse, leaving a mountain of rubble. About 120 people were still in the hall at the time. 7 were killed and another 63 were injured, 16 seriously, with 1 dying later. All of the victims were not the intended targets. Hitler did not learn of the attempt on his life until later that night on a stop in Nuremberg. George Elser was caught, tried, and was held as a prisoner for over 5 years until he was executed at Dachau concentration camp in 1945. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded western Poland under the pretext of having been denied claims to the free city of Danzig and the right to extraterritorial roads across the Polish corridor, which Germany had ceded under the Versailles Treaty. In response, Britain and France declared war on Nazi Germany on September 3rd, surprising Hitler and prompting him to angrily ask Ribbentrop, "Now what?" France and Britain did not act on their declarations immediately, and on September 17th, Soviet forces invaded eastern Poland. Hitler instructed the 2 newly appointed Nazi party leaders of northwestern Poland, Albert Foster of the Danzig West Prussia area and Arthur Greiser of the Wartheland area, to Germanize these areas, with no questions asked about how this was accomplished. In Forster's area, ethnic Poles merely had to sign forms stating that they had German blood. In stark contrast, Greiser agreed with Heinrich Himmler and carried out an ethnic cleansing campaign towards Poles. Greiser soon complained that Forster had allowed thousands of Poles to be accepted as racial Germans and thus endangered German racial purity. Hitler refrained from getting involved, however. This inaction has been advanced as an example of the theory of working towards the leader, in which Hitler issues vague instructions and expected his subordinates to work out policies on their own. On April 9th, German forces invaded Denmark and Norway. On the same day, Hitler proclaimed the birth of the Greater Germanic Empire. His vision of a united empire of Germanic nations of Europe, in which the Dutch, Flemish, and Scandinavians were joined into a racially pure polity under German leadership. In May 1940, Germany attacked France and conquered Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Belgium. These victories prompted Benito Mussolini to have the Kingdom of Italy join forces with Hitler on June 10th. France and Germany signed an armistice on June 22nd. This led to the formation of Vichy France under the rule of fascist Philippe Pétain. Following the unexpected swift victory, Hitler promoted 12 generals to the rank of Field Marshal during the 1940 Field Marshal ceremony. During the same ceremony, Hermann Göring was promoted to the newly created rank of Marshal of the Realm. Hitler created the rank just for him. Britain, whose troops were forced to evacuate France by sea from Dunkirk, continued to fight alongside other British dominions in the Battle of the Atlantic. Hitler made peace overtures to the new British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and upon their rejection, he ordered a series of aerial attacks on Royal Air Force air bases and radar stations in southeast England. On September 7th, the systematic nightly bombing of London, England began. The German Air Force failed to defeat the Royal Air Force in what became known as the Battle of Britain. By the end of September, Hitler realized that air superiority for the invasion of Britain could not be achieved, and ordered Operation Sea Lion to be postponed. On September 27, 1940, the Tripartite Pact was signed in Berlin between Nazi Germany, the Kingdom of Italy, and the Empire of Japan, and later it was expanded to include Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. Hitler's attempt to integrate the Soviet Union into an anti-British bloc failed after inconclusive talks between Hitler and the Soviet diplomat Yugoslav Molotov in November, and he ordered preparations for the invasion of the Soviet Union. In early 1941, German forces were deployed to North Africa, the Balkans, and the Middle East. In February, German forces arrived in Libya to bolster the Italian presence. In April, Hitler launched the invasion of Yugoslavia, quickly followed by the invasion of Greece. In May, German forces were sent to support Iraqi rebel forces fighting against the British and to invade Crete. On June 22, 1941, contravening the Hitler-Stalin Non-Aggression Pact in 1939, 4 to 5 million Axis troops attacked the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa was intended to destroy the Soviet Union and seize its natural resources for subsequent aggression against the Western powers. The invasion conquered a huge area, including the Baltic republics, Belarus, and western Ukraine. By early August, Axis troops had advanced 310 miles and won the Battle of Smolensk. Hitler ordered Army Group Center to temporarily halt its advance to Moscow and divert its tank group to aid in the encirclement of Leningrad and Kiev. His generals disagreed with this change, having advanced within 250 miles of Moscow, and his decision caused a crisis among the military leadership. The pause provided the Soviet Red Army with an opportunity to mobilize fresh reserves. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the American fleet base in Pearl Harbor, Republic of Hawaii. 4 days later, Adolf Hitler declared war against the United States of America. In late 1942, German forces were defeated in the Second Battle of El Alamein, thwarting Hitler's plans to seize the Suez Canal and the Middle East. Overconfident in his own military expertise following the earlier victories in 1940, Hitler became distrustful of his army high command and began to interfere in military and tactical planning, with damaging consequences. In December 1942 and January 1943, Hitler's repeated refusal to allow their withdrawal at the Battle of Stalingrad led to the almost total destruction of the Sixth Army. Hitler's military judgment became increasingly erratic, and Germany's military and economic position deteriorated, as did Hitler's health. Hitler became addicted to amphetamines in late 1942. Albert Speer linked this to Hitler's increasingly erratic behavior and inflexible decision-making. Throughout 1943 and 1944, the Soviet Union steadily forced Hitler's armies into retreat along the Eastern Front. On June 6, 1944, the Western Allied armies launched in northern France in one of the largest amphibious operations in history called Operation Overlord. Many German officers concluded that the defeat was inevitable and that continuing under Hitler's leadership would result in the complete destruction of the country. On July 20, 1944, Klaus von Stauffenberg and other conspirators attempted to assassinate Adolf Hitler inside his Wolf's Lair field headquarters near Rostenburg, East Prussia. The aim of the assassination attempt was to remove the political control of Germany and its armed forces from the Nazi Party and to make peace with Western allies as soon as possible. The failure of the 20 July plot and the intended military coup that was to follow led the Gestapo to arrest more than 7,000 people, of whom they executed 4,980. Hitler suffered ruptured eardrums as a result of the 20 July plot bomb blast in 1944, and 200 wood splinters had to be removed from his legs. By late 1944, both the Red Army and the Western Allies were advancing into Germany. Recognizing the strength and determination of the Red Army, Hitler decided to use his remaining mobile reserves against the American and British troops, which he perceived as far weak. On December 16th, he launched the Ardennes Offensive to incite disunity among the Western Allies and perhaps convince them to join the fight against the Soviets. The offensive failed after some temporary successes. With much of Germany in ruins in January 1945, Hitler spoke on the radio, "However grave as the crisis may be at this moment, it will, despite everything, be mastered by our unaltered will." Acting on his view that Germany's military failures meant it had forfeited its right to survive as a nation, Hitler ordered the destruction of all German industrial infrastructure before it could fall into Allied hands. Minister of Armament Albert Speer was entrusted with executing the scorched earth policy, but he secretly disobeyed the order. Hitler's hope to negotiate peace with the United States and Britain was encouraged by the death of U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. On April 20th, his 56th birthday, Hitler made his last trip from the leader's shelter to the surface. In the ruined garden of the Realm Chancellery, he awarded Iron Crosses to boy soldiers of the Hitler Youth, who were now fighting the Red Army at the front near Berlin. By April 21st, the 1st Belarusian Front had broken through the defenses of General Gotthard Heinrich's army group Vistula during the Battle of Seelow Heights and advanced to the outskirts of Berlin. In denial of the dire situation, Hitler placed his hopes on the undermanned and under-equipped Army Detached Steiner, commanded by Armed Protection Squadron General Felix Steiner. Hitler ordered General Steiner to attack the northern flank of the salient, while the German 9th Army was ordered to attack northward in a pincer attack. During the military conference of April 22nd, Hitler asked about Steiner's offensive. He was told that the attack had not been launched and the Soviets had entered Berlin. Hitler asked everyone except Wilhelm Keitel, Alfred Zold, Hans Krebs, and Wilhelm Bergdorf to leave the room, then launched into a tirade against the treachery and incompetence of his commanders, culminating in his declaration for the first time that everything was lost. He announced that he would stay in Berlin until the end and then shoot himself. By April 23rd, the Red Army had surrounded Berlin, and Goebbels made a proclamation urging its citizens to defend the city. That same day, Goering sent a telegram arguing that since Hitler was isolated in Berlin, Goering should assume leadership of Nazi Germany. Hitler responded by having Goering arrested. On April 28th, Hitler discovered that Himmler was trying to negotiate a surrender to the Western Allies. He ordered Himmler's arrest. After midnight on April 29th, Hitler married Eva Braun in a small civil ceremony in the bunker. Later that afternoon, Hitler was informed of the execution of Benito Mussolini, which presumably increased his determination to avoid capture. On April 30th, 1945, when Soviet troops were within a block or two of the Realm Chancellery, Hitler shot himself in the head and Braun bit into a cyanide capsule. Their bodies were carried outside to the garden, where they were placed in a bomb crater, doused with petrol, and set on fire as the Red Army shelling continued. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz had been made leader of Nazi Germany in Hitler's last will and testimony. He and Joseph Goebbels assumed Hitler's roles as head of state and chancellor, respectively. Berlin surrendered on May 2nd. Records in the Soviet archives obtained after the fall of the Soviet Union state that the remains of Hitler, Braun, Joseph and Magna Goebbels, the 6 Goebbels children, General Hans Krebs, and Hitler's dogs were among the dead within and around the bunker. The corpses of Braun and Hitler were fully burned when the Red Army found them, and only a lower jaw with dental work could be identified as Hitler's remains. Hitler had followed a vegetarian diet for most of his life and publicly avoided alcohol only after 1939. He occasionally drank beer and wine in private, though. Ernst Gunther Schleck and several other doctors who met Hitler in the last weeks of his life formed a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. If you've liked the video, then feel free to click the like button. If you want to subscribe or comment, please do so. You can help financially support the channel by donating on my Patreon page. And you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Links are in the description. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you farewell.